Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday Junior, as I like to call it. Welcome to the program to proposal in under 60 minutes. I'll be co-hosting along with Archit Awasti. I'm Colin Murray, part of the team here at Snaptrude. We're really excited to show you some of the workflows and the toolkit associated with Snaptrude. As of today, Snaptrude is the leading cloud-based design platform for architects and interior designers who want to accelerate their concept design workflows and unlock a new era of creative collaboration. You can check us out after. We'll be providing a couple of different links, including ways to access Snaptrude early. So stay tuned towards the end on how to get access to all of that. With that being said, I'll be handing it off to our actual host today, as I'm only the co-host, Archit Awasti. Archit, thanks for hosting. Take it away.
Thank you, Colin. Hey everyone, my name is Archit. Really glad to be hosting you all today. And without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So, what we're going to be doing today is designing a project in 60 minutes, as the title said. And we're going to kick things straight off by talking about what the brief is. So, it's a pretty straightforward one here. We have to design an arts and design education facility in Boise, Idaho, with a site area of approximately 110,000 square feet and a similar built up area, which gives us the target FAR as 1. Okay. And what I'm going to do right off is jump into Snaptrude. I have a new project here. Cool. And the first thing I'm going to do is import the topography and the surrounding context for our project here. Now, what I'll do here is paste in the coordinates, and that's going to fly over to the city of Boise. There you go. So that's the Boise State University campus that you see highlighted in a beige color here. And what I'll do is just crop enough so you can see enough of the context, especially right here, the Boise River. And I'm going to switch on buildings. So there you go. Now switch to 3D, and we have imported the site context with the surrounding buildings. What I'll do real quick is delete this building because if you guessed it, yeah, that's the one we are going to be modeling today. And also I'm just going to move the project site a bit here, a bit closer to the origin. Awesome. So now that we're set up, I'm going to jump into one of the most time-consuming parts of early stage design, which is programming, right? So when we start our projects, we start with something that looks like this, which is a program brief. We've all seen these. They have all the spaces, their details, how many spaces, uh, area, and lastly, they are all categorized by departments, right? So the next step logically after this would be to pick up each space and draw it individually in our 3D modeling tool, right? And that's something that we've all obviously spent hours doing. But let me show you something cool. So with Snaptrude, you can actually import your program data from the spreadsheet as a CSV file. So let me just drag that spreadsheet right in. Okay. And you can see on the left here, I don't know if you can make out, but it started importing these 3D blocks. Yeah, there you go. So these are all 3D spaces right from your program brief, which are colored by the department, which are labeled as per your CSV, and which have unique object properties. Each one of them has the properties. And then from the areas chart over here, you can actually see how each one of these spaces is contributing to the total project area and to the project FAR, right? I can just go here and see a bunch of different options and area charts. And speaking of FAR, right now it says 0 here because we have not drawn a site yet. So I'm going to do that real quick. Go back to 2D. I'm going to take my draw tool and draw the site. There's our project site. Quickly going to change a bunch of properties here and label this as site, which is going to automatically make it take up the properties of the project site. So now when I open the areas chart again, you'll be able to see that when I set up the target FAR, it has pulled in the site area from what we just drew. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to set the target FAR as 1. Awesome. So now you can see that with the imported 3D spaces here from our program, we are meeting the target FAR of 1 by 83%, right? Awesome. And there is something even more amazing about the way the program briefs are converted into 3D spaces. Let me just show you. For a second, I'm going to hide the topography to make it less distracting. And from the areas tab over here, I can actually open up the tables for this project. And here you'll get all the program data for each space within the project. And they're all, like you can see, categorized by the departments. They all have their unique properties. In fact, if I expand this spreadsheet here, you'll be able to see that there are a lot more detailed properties, everything related to every space, including their dimensions, the floors they're on, the net area that we want to achieve. So that is basically the total target area is what you get when you first bring in your program briefs. So for example, if for let's say the ceramic suite, we have a target of 5,000. Now, as we keep on editing our 3D spaces throughout the project and throughout designing, it'll actually keep track of what that original target was. So by the end, you are in line with the project requirements. Okay. And that's just one example of how you can use these. Another fun fact here is that all these properties are bidirectional. What that means is when I select any space here, you can see that it's selected on the canvas as well. And if I were to, let's say, edit something like the area, it's going to get edited in the canvas as well. So it gets updated in real time. It's bidirectional. You can use this for a bunch of things like changing the width, the stories, like I mentioned. And I think that's a really neat way to, just keep track of your design and make sure that it's aligned with the client requirements. And that's something which we often uh, lose track of as we're designing. Like I remember this one time when I was actually working on an office campus project for Microsoft. And the night before a presentation, I realized that all the areas in my program had moved by one row. So the areas for all the spaces were wrong. And I had to actually go back and spend hours making those corrections in my SketchUp model and then, finishing something up for the presentation. But anyway, like I was saying, it's like very easy to just keep track of the design and feasibility, right? Cool. So now let's jump into the actual form finding with these spaces. So before that, I'm just quickly going to show you guys something of how we want to start designing. Awesome. So we have the site and context here. This, like I mentioned before, the site is located within the Boise State University campus, which is everything to the right of the highway that you see over here. And we have the Boise River to the north. And to the west, we have the downtown, right? And where we want to kick things off here is with a simple concept sketch. So there are these three avenues that intersect kind of in the middle of the site. To the west, we have the downtown, like I mentioned. To the east, we have the rest of the campus and the art gallery. And to the south and southwest, we actually have the main pedestrian street. That's also the service entry to our site. And to the north, notably, we have the views of the Boise River. And further north, you can actually see the mountains that abut the city of Boise, right? So what I'm thinking is we can actually use these three blue axes that you see here and start designing with them. So maybe what we can do is have our main circulation spines along these axes, right? That's just the basic idea for what I'm going to do next. I'm going to take the draw tool again, and I'm going to draw with an offset here. So let's say circulation corridor, so 10 feet would be fair enough. And I'm going to start designing something like this, something that goes maybe all the way till the middle of the site here. And now perpendicular to the western edge, just going to create something which is about this. Hit enter. I'm going to draw this one here as well. And I'm going to move these a bit towards the middle of the site. Cool. So now the next thing that I want to do is basically start picking up each one of these blocks and arranging them next to these corridors that we've just created, right? But if I were to just quickly go back to our program here, I can just show you here. You can notice that the departments are actually they actually consist of two kind of spaces. One are the more studio or like the educational kind of spaces, which are everything about sculpture and ceramics, design technology, so on and so forth, whatever I'm highlighting here. And the other side of the program brief are the more public spaces, which are basically these ones over here. And then obviously we have the circulation and support spaces. So the idea here is that we could have two wings in this iteration that we are trying. One could be an art studio wing, which we can actually plan towards the north here, towards the northern edge of the site. And why that is because art studios need a lot of diffuse light. Each one of these functions can be fully supported by a glazing, and also to a like it would be really nice to have those kind of spaces from where you can appreciate views of the Boise River, right? And all the public functions which I was talking about, like the galleries and the exhibition spaces, those can be shifted here to the south. They would be accessible from the pedestrian street, as well as more easily accessible from the rest of the campus, right? So instead of picking those blocks and kind of trying to put them as the first step, what I'm going to do here is just measure how much space we have here, about 100 feet. And I'm going to draw another offset mass here with, let's say, 40 feet of width. Awesome. So this is basically the foundation for the idea of having the art studios over here. And at this point, I'm quickly just going to jump back into the area targets, the area charts rather, and I'm going to check these by the labels, right? So right now, it's calculating all the areas that are occupied by these blocks as well. But what I'm going to do is quickly hide them so that they are no longer part of the area calculations which we're doing right now. And you can see that right now with the space that I've selected, we are doing a total area of about 15,000. And if I were to quickly open the tables again, I'm just going to calculate how much area we need for all the Art Studio functions, right? So let me open the detail view here. And okay, what all is in Art Studios? Sculpture, education, yes. Collaboration, yes. And a bit of the lobby and a bit of the circulation and support spaces. So if the total area for this is coming to about 76,000, I would say that maybe we could take 65,000 as the target area for this wing here, the art studio wing. And what I'll do next is to achieve that area of 65,000. I'm just going to copy these up. Before doing that, let me just quickly change the story height from the default 10 feet to 15 feet. Cool. Now I take these and let me copy them up. Keep your eyes on the area charts here as you see them change. And once more. Okay, so that's reasonable. We wanted 65, but we are achieving 58,000 with this. So I think we can plan this wing to be 4 stories tall. And I'm going to do very quickly a similar exercise with the public functions as well. So going back to the tables, public galleries, we have the library, and we'll keep the administration in the public section as well. So that's a total of 17,000. And we had, I think, 10,000 left over from the lobbies and circulation. So let's take about 25,000 to be the target for this. And what I'll do is, depending on how much space we have here, it's about 108 feet. We take about half of that. This block here can be 60 feet wide. And I'm going to align it to this for now.
Archit, I'll allow you to catch your breath for a second here as you keep designing. I do want to point some attention to the chat and appreciate those who have been asking questions throughout. I'll just read off some of our questions and answers in case you haven't been keeping an eye on it. Alex asked, is there a possibility to link with cost data bank when we're referring to tables? The answer to that is yes, you can link your cost data bank directly into tables. Tables work exactly like Excel. You can link external data and use formulas as you would in Excel. Parakesh also asked, do changes made in Excel get updated into Snaptrude automatically? Like if I change the area of any space, do I have to re-import or is it updated dynamically? And the answer to that is it's dynamic. There's a bidirectional link between the spaces and the data in tables. We even caught a compliment from Parakesh, who says, that sounds interesting, takes the hassle out of going back and forth in my planning stage. That is totally the goal, and we're excited for you to see that. If you have any other questions throughout the demonstration today, feel free to ask. We're happy to chat back and forth, and thanks to those who already did.
Awesome. So I just copied these public zones here as well. And what I'm trying to do is get to the area of about 100,000 here. Right now we're meeting 67%. And if you remember, when we imported those blocks, it was about 83%. So I'm just trying to get a fair idea of exactly how much um, figure ground we'll be occupying here, right? So what I'll do is this passage in the middle, I'm just going to extend it. And the idea is that this can be like a transparent lobby that connects both functions. And now we're close to about a 71%. And another idea here is that in our art studio wing, we have the ceramic suite and the sculpture studio. Sorry, so both of these are functions which require access on the site. So what I'll do is I'll just allocate some space for that public access. Let me select the one at the bottom. I'll make it unique. And I'm going to pull this out by, let's say, about 15 feet. Awesome. Fair enough. Right now we're at a 74, so we have some more room to play with. And you can see that uh, we have the two wings, we have public functions, private functions, or more of educational functions, which are segregated and in fact connected by a lobby that we can design as a transparent space. Um, so the next thing which now we want to do is start getting into more of detailed site planning and programming. So at this point, I can see that this is probably when I'll take my decision of how should the circulation flow within the site, where should my access points be, where should my entries be, and after that, I actually start taking those program blocks and I start arranging them within these dummy masses that we've just created, right? So let me just show you a bit of how I would do that. So we see that this edge here is 55 feet. And what we want over here, like I just pointed out, are these spaces which require site access, right? So what I'll do here is take some of these spaces and let me just try to see it side by side. That's probably not a good idea because it distorts everything. Just going to switch back here. Cool. So for the foundry, now I'll change this length to 55 feet and you'll see its width get adjusted automatically based on the length that I'm setting to meet the total area. And I'll do that for all these spaces. I know that I can just select one cell and drag it down, but unfortunately that doesn't work yet somehow. So I have to change each one of them. And once I go back into my project now, that's better. You can see that all these spaces which were in the blue department, their widths have been changed to 55 feet, right? And now I can just take them and start bringing them into our model, to the dummy masses. Once again, quickly, very easily hide all the buildings, move this a lot closer. I can select that dummy mass, right click on it and lock it for now. And once I have all my spaces, don't worry, I'm not gonna sit and select each one and move it around. I'll just do 3 and I'll show you that you can then select this mask here and hide it. And that way you'll be able to start arranging and form finding for the entire program. Oops, the height somehow got changed here. That's okay. I can just edit it from the menu, or I can just conventionally use the push-pull tool as well. And yeah, so now I'm basically going to skip through the entire part of blocking and stacking with all of these spaces. And I'm going to show you that if I spend another 30 minutes, I've created a model here which looks something like this. There you go. So what I've done is I've added some curves here. Firstly, you would notice that instead of having a linear kind of a sharp break where these axes meet, I've actually curved that around. And one more thing you'll notice is that I've assigned different colors to each space so that all of them look visually different. But the idea is still the same with the two wings, with the art studios facing the north side. And over here, now you can get a better understanding of how if we can have all of these spaces as glazed facades, then we would be able to get in a lot of diffused natural light. And we can also see the lobby space over here and the gallery space in the public function building, which I've converted into a double height space here. Right. So this is typically what the end of the entire blocking and stacking and programming uh, process would look like. And now the next step here would be to actually validate this. How much, so the areas that we started out with, how much of that are we even meeting? So I'm firstly going to check the FAR once again. And you can see that over here now it's at a 99%, which means that we have actually introduced more space and like that's just more space for collaboration and flexibility within the building, right? Uh, there's also a bunch of other things you can do here. Like if I go to carpet area and I can see that the first 4 stories, the rest of them I think have been created by mistake, but how the first 4 stories are contributing to the FAR, and within them, how our individual spaces aligning, right? And I can even switch this into something of a bar diagram and so on and so forth, right? That's so that's the areas I think verified, and this looks okay to me. Now the next thing which I would like to do is also verify the sunlight performance. We've been talking about having views, having glazing, but does that really make sense in Boise's climate and with the sun hours study over there, right? So the first thing I'll do is turn on the sun path diagram here. And just going to zoom out a bit so you can see the entire neighborhood and how low the sun actually gets as compared to where I'm from. India is, of course. But yeah, what we want to do next is just orbit. I'm going to go to the sun hours analysis here. And I'm going to run this for, say, 6 months. Cool. So this takes 20 to 30 seconds. So if there are any more questions in the chat, Colin, do you want to pick some up?
Only one new one from Alex, a repeat questionnaire, appreciate it, asking if there will be AI design options generation implemented. If not, is it on the roadmap? So while we don't have that today, and I'm not allowed to reveal too much, keep your eye out for some of the future announcements regarding this and many other features to come. That's all I'm allowed to say.
Awesome. Exciting times are surely coming. Yeah, so here you see the area, the sunlight performance for the first 6 months of the year. Now, this is a very good validation for us, whatever we have been doing so far with having the north facade as, with the idea of having it completely glazed. You can see that it's mostly receiving diffused sunlight. This also validates the fact that on the south here, where we have placed most of our circulation for the art studio wing, so that's going to act as a nice buffer for the rest of the block. And also it makes sense to curve this edge here because that will reduce the heat gain of the in the building, right? And we can see that if we want this lobby space in the middle to be transparent, we do have both the shorter sides available to have more of glazing. And on the western faces here, it would probably make sense to have these overhangs extend out a bit. So I know I've already kind of created this angular profile here for the building, but if you hadn't, then this would be a good time when you could actually say that, okay, let's add some more overhangs and make these gallery spaces almost as if they are connected directly to the street, as extended balconies. Cool. So based on this and based on the areas analysis that we just did, let's say that we want to go ahead with this design option, right? So how do we now present it and draft a proposal from what we've done so far? So now I'm going to again skip to a different model, which I've made a bit more presentable. And when I say presentable, I've basically just added in some context with like modeling some roads here. I've added some people. I have also added this extra space on the top, which is basically, uh, it's not a space that contributes to the FAR, but it's just the design of how I want the parapet walls to be so that they can conceal all the rooftop services in this project, right? And I've added some spaces here. So this one here is a lawn. This here is a pathway. And even on the university uh, side of things, I've added some circulation, access points to the building. And I've also saved some views in this project. So if you go to the views tab over here, I've saved some axonometric views. That looks really neat. Then I have some perspective views where I've changed the color of the sky a bit. And yeah, so this is one way of presenting your designs, which is okay. But what I would like to show you is something way cooler. So first, let's talk a bit about the 2D presentation modes that you can get out of Snaptrude. So you can actually save plan views with all the labels for each space visible, um, with these views are scaled as per the sheet that you select. So let me show you how you can do that real quick. And I go to views, view settings, and I can add a sheet here. And you say it's a D size with a scale of -16. And I can save this sheet. And I can access all my sheets from here. So these are all the floor plans. And I can actually go ahead and export them as PDFs. You can see, I can select all of them, can maybe add a title block and then export them. So I have already exported one set, which I'm just going to pull out real quick.
Hey, Archit, Seneca
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
asking, how
Mhm.
long did it take to get from the first model we had to the second, and then again from the second to the third? Can you kind of touch on, and I know you're a bit of an expert now in Snaptrude, but how long would you say the average user would take to progress from these different models that you've shown?
Right. So purely in terms of how long it takes, um, to complete the massing model, it took about 30 to 40 minutes. Once we had those corridors established and then we brought in each space and we started adjusting the widths, then there was a bit of, trying to get this the profile, like converting that sharp edge into an arc and things like that. So that I think took another 30 to 40 minutes. And then finally, like adding the site context and modeling everything just to make it presentation ready, I think that took another 20 to 30 minutes. So I would say good 1.5 to 2 hours is what it took me to get here.
Awesome. There you have it.
Cool. Yeah, I was going to show you guys the PDF export. So yeah, this is what it looks like, and you can go and directly print this sheet as it is, or you could even take it into Illustrator or Photoshop or whatever it is that you guys use for post-processing. And each one of these, the labels, the colors, they're all editable as vectors, right? So you could just go to Illustrator, select all these, and change the font style, change anything that you like. And that's how you can get your 2D outputs right out of Snaptrude. And the next thing, which a lot of people find very interesting, are the 3D outputs. So yes, we have some views which we can just navigate within the model and then save them. But what if we want to render these? So if you guys have heard, we've got this cool new feature called AI render, and you can actually use it to generate realistic and creative renders right out of your model, right out of this view. So this is how the interface looks. And I'm just going to very quickly, I need some settings here. You want to go creative mode, maybe an autumn sunset. And let me just show you guys. I'm just trying to copy a prompt that I had used earlier. You could obviously iterate and see what works best for you. But yeah, there's the prompt that I want to render this with. And I'm going to click on render. And this again takes about 30 to 40 seconds on an average. And while that is happening, I'm just quickly going to tell you, what makes Snaptrude's AI render different. So the major problems with AI rendering tools today is hallucinations, right? Because it takes literally a screenshot of your model and then it just, excuse me, it renders that screenshot as it is. But this Snaptrude's AI render is actually built on the 3D geometry and the materiality inside your design. Like everything that you do here, it can actually read that geometry. It can read how big the building is, what's the scale, and then it takes that data, what the material is, and it basically creates a render based on that. So not only is it beautiful, but it also respects your design. And to add to that, even when I change my view, like if I just move around in the model, which is here in the background, and I were to say stand someone somewhere else in the model and make a new render, then it would, you know, keep the same settings as it did for the first render, and it would actually produce something in a similar design language based on your prompts, of course. So that's another really, really cool thing about Snaptrude's AI render.
While we wait for that, I'll read off some of the discourse that's taking place in the chat once again. We had Renato and Rakib, who I actually mixed up the first response to. Renato is asking, is there plans to release a Mac OS app version? And to that, I say we don't have any immediate plans to release a Mac OS app. We will be web-based, and we have made significant performance improvements in the last few months. On Chrome browser especially, the performance should be smooth for projects similar to the likes that Archid is presenting. And for Rakib, they had said, can you export to Revit for changing into walls, floors, and roofs? You can. You can do our automated mask to BIM feature, which is also labeled as create building internally, and then export the model to Revit, retaining all BIM properties. And you're welcome. Appreciate the questions.
Awesome. So here it is. Like here's the first render that we've generated from this massing model. And I mean, AI rendering is obviously an continuously iterative process. So for here, for this render, I can observe that the upper floors have come in as pretty solid masses, whereas we actually wanted a lot of glazing on this facade, which is the north, right? So I don't think I've actually mentioned that in the prompt explicitly, So what I'm going to do is just quickly edit this prompt a little bit and we'll give it one more go. Okay.
Curious if anyone attending today has utilized any AI in their rendering before. Would love to hear what you've used, how the experience was. Feel free to drop that in the chat.
I just closed that window by mistake. I see people typing Veras in the chat. Yeah, that's pretty cool. The thing with Veras is the results are pretty awesome. And the only thing which I mentioned right now was about the model-based rendering that Snaptrude does. So, like, even if it's like in you see what's happening on the screen right now, it's clearly able to recognize how many floors there are and like what the design languages that you want to be through the prompt. Okay, so I'm just going to stop right there and show you guys this. So over here, we still did not get a lot of the curtain wall as we would have liked on this facade. But what we did get perfectly is the scale, the lighting, which looks pretty amazing. And it has added a bit more glazing to where we wanted it. Now, I'm sure if we start, you know, adding a bit more to the prompt, maybe adding a bit more to the materials, especially because right now we're just rendering it from a block model. But let's say if I were to actually go ahead and apply a glass material to these blocks, now that would surely change a lot of things and would make it a lot more interesting. Like if I were to render that, and I'm not gonna like, or maybe let's do it. Let's try one of these. But after this, I'm actually going to show you guys some renders that we have created. Or maybe while this is rendering, I could just show you that in while we do it. Right. So I just applied some glass material to these, and now I'll show you what I mean. I'll just change my viewing angle a bit here, and maybe if I come somewhere here, let's get rid of these. Okay. So if we say if we're here, and now you see the thumbnail has updated already according to our new viewing angle, and I'm gonna just erase everything. Maybe there's something wrong with what I'm prompting, and I'm gonna click on suggest, and let's see what uh, the rendering engine actually suggests as a prompt for this view. Okay, so just gonna tweak this a little bit. Yeah, everything else pretty much looks good to me. And I can also change a bit of the weather here. Maybe go for a day view. And I'm going to click on render. Cool. So let's come back to this in a bit. What I want to show you guys is actually like what are some of the renders that we could generate from the models as we went into a little more detail. So here's one, which is also what you guys must have seen on the poster. So to create this render, we actually went into the more like BIM side of things, and we added some curtain walls, we added an overhang here, and the rest of the model was exactly the same with the people and trees as they are, right? And then we have this one here, which is a model of a render of the same model, but from a different angle. So if I just go back and forth between these two, you'll be able to see that it actually followed the the exact same language for the other render as well, right? And this one here is a bit more on the artistic side, where you're standing on the other side of the building, and we asked it to like for the concrete to be entirely white, something like a Zaha Hadid language. And this one here as well was a part of that second series of renders that we pulled out. Awesome. Just gonna go back and see if we've got a render. It might take a little more time because we kind of came out of this tab, so that might have caused this Chrome tab to be inactive. So I'm just gonna give it a little more time.
Hey, Archit, Parakesh had a question about how this render considers the scale and depth in the model. I kind of touched on a little bit about the depth mapping that we utilize to accurately convey the model's geometry in each render. Anything you would add there?
Let me just go through the chat ones. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not like an expert when it comes to AI or like how these renders, how the engine actually understands them. But I've seen our product team and the engineers working on some wireframes for what is the information that actually gets relayed from these images or from these models to the engine. And I've seen that they can pull out the entire wireframe of the building. Like if you were to, for example, on SketchUp, if you were to just go to a wireframe view, you would actually see the bare bones of the building. So it can recognize each edge, each vertex, and then that's the data that it actually feeds into the rendering engine. So that's basically how it understands the scale through the depth mapping.
And
Awesome. So
then Rakib asked, how much
Mhm.
time did it take to get the last rendering once connected to BIM?
So just the render, that just takes about 30 to 40 seconds, like it did for all of these. But if you're asking about how much time it took to actually model the entire BIM model, that I would say took about half a day's work because we had to go from this passing model into BIM. So that's probably a topic for the next webinar. But yeah, that's how long it takes.
And I think the question was specifically asking about the time it took to render, to which we would agree there's actually no difference in the time it takes to render the BIM objects versus the massing study.
Yeah, there's no difference in that. It takes the same amount of time.
Sweet.
And in fact, the more you go on detailing the model, like the one that what I've done here, just adding a little bit of transparency to those massing blocks actually made the engine understand transparency a lot better in general, right? So it's, like I said, a constantly iterative process, but once you start trying it out, and I'm sure a lot of you will, it's going to be a lot of fun. Awesome. So with that, I'm just going to come back and wrap things up a bit. So yeah, with that, like you saw how we could generate all these. I mean, the title of the webinar was Programs to Proposals, right? So you can see by the end, with a little bit of work within maybe 2 hours or even half a day, you can actually reach uh, outputs like these. And all the time, not just focusing on the output, but also getting real time validation based on your uh, design choices. So you can make those informed decisions all within the same tool, by the way, which is my favorite part, right? And yeah, I'm not sure if many of you knew, but yeah, this is an actual project, the Boise State University Center for the Visual Arts by HGA and Lobat Conrad. So credits to them. Yeah, that's me wrapping up. If you have any questions, please reach out to Colin. And if there are any more, we can. I think we have about 4 minutes more, so we can take them right now.
Great job, Archer, and thanks so much for the demonstration today. I'm seeing hearts, I'm seeing clap emojis all popping up in the bottom right of the Zoom, which is sweet to see. I'm going to be dropping a link right now in the general chat, which can get you on the wait list for Snaptrude. Do a little bit of exploration around the product yourself. And if there's any sales questions or anything related to licensing, happy to have those conversations. I will say it's mostly unique to each case, so feel free to email me at colin@snaptrude.com and we can have a discussion around what that would look like for your firm. It is a cloud-based subscription, Rakib, and it exists entirely in the browser. I'm just reading these in real time. Sweet. Yep. So follow us on Snaptrude's LinkedIn and Twitter for more updates on our product, see where our team is traveling to, and the use cases for Snaptrude with today's clients. We appreciate everyone's time today in the webinar, especially those who stuck around to the end. We're asking questions, and hopefully will be following up with us to get their hands on Snaptrude themselves. So for Archit, myself, and the team, we thank all of you again for your time today, and we hope to hear from you soon. Take care.